If you've ever seen those little swirls of light that show up when you press really hard on your eyes, those are known as phosphates. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, we can try this out very easily, simply by putting pressure on your eyes. You can try it now if you feel curious. Just close your eyes really tightly or use your hands to apply pressure if you need to. It might take a while, so if you don't see anything right away, I promise I'm not lying. After a couple seconds, it should show up. Sometimes it's multicolored, sometimes just white. It moves around kind of differently for everyone. To me, it's reminiscent of ripples in water or the pattern the magnetic field makes around a magnet. These twinkles and swirls of light are created because your brain is trying to interpret the pressure being put on your eyes as an image. There's no image actually there, but our minds create this illusion out of light, even though we know light is present in the first place. Our brains creating an image out of pressure is really interesting, and it made me think, out of everything we see, how much of it is accurate. How much of the world around us can we actually understand with only 5 senses, and how much is determined by our individual interpretations. I made a couple paintings about this in grade 10, but I left the idea alone pretty quickly. I didn't make anything I really loved, and although I found this to be an interesting topic, if I'm being honest, I found everything interesting in grade 10. I think for a lot of us during that time, we're very open, very impressionable, constantly fixating on different ideas that never really end up being fully explored. Not long after this, though, the first images came out from the James Webb Telescope. I'm sure all of you know about it. The James Webb is an amazing and gorgeous space telescope. It's capable of capturing images of space in a way that the Hubble could never really do. There's so much to be said about this super high definition and high sensitivity telescope, but ultimately, the images speak for themselves. Like any image capturing telescope, it works by absorbing all wavelengths of light into the ultraviolet and then on the other end, infrared spectrums, so the light that we can't see. But the information that we can get from these seemingly invisible waves of light is really cool. And by absorbing these various wavelengths, we're able to observe the birth of star clusters, where new galaxies are forming, all sorts of things that I don't really need to get into right now. But essentially, this telescope is able to capture these light waves that we can't see, that our brains alone wouldn't understand, and turn them into an image that we can. It's taking light that to us is completely invisible and is turning it into something that's real and that we can perceive. I felt like that kind of mirrors how our brains work, trying to take in all the information they can and turning that into something understandable. It's a complex process, and it's one that our brains share with the telescope. In the case of James Webb, we've programmed it to do what it does. We understand how it works, and it's incredible that this complex machine is capable of breaking down parts of the universe that should be out of our grasp. Additionally, the James Webb communicates a different perspective than the Hubble, even when they're generating images of the same thing. So these are both pictures of the pillars of creation, one taken by the Hubble, one taken by the James Webb. I think it's interesting that each of our brains work hard to understand the world too, and similarly, we end up with different images. Although we don't understand the way our brains interpret what they do to the same extent that we understand the telescopes, we still know that we each end up with such a nuanced and complex perspectives, each perspective being incredibly unique. And communicating one's own perspective is the entire point of art. And I love that that's what people are able to do with their art, and that's what I try to do too. I'm never really offering a very complex or deep perspective, but it's mine. Most of the paintings that I make, and most of the designs I create in general, I find myself going back to these themes of space and light that I once loved in grade 10, exploring the way that light enters my brain and fabricates my reality. I can't tell you exactly how that works, or one day I'll make a piece that's just swirls of light, and another day I'll make something a little bit more complex. But with all of my work, I'm saying, here's my perspective. This is the view from my telescope. Everyone who makes art creates it because of their interpretation of the world. And that's exactly how art should be made, communicating one perspective out of billions of others. Thank you.